there. So this is our second video in our 4-part series that we're doing on EQ, emotional intelligence. And as I talked to you before, a lot about self-awareness. We talked about all the amazing work that Travis Bradbury has done in the more contemporary years, and Daniel Goleman before him. And so let's talk about that second part of mastering emotional intelligence, and that is the self-management piece. So we talked about self-awareness last time and the importance of being aware of ourselves. And what that means is being aware of our emotions and how we feel, and not only being aware of them, but giving ourselves permission to feel how we feel, validating our feelings, and identifying the discomfort or comfort of our feelings. This all is part of being aware of ourselves. Today, we're going to graduate even more so into managing ourselves. So when we're aware of those emotions, now what are we going to manage them? So the management is very important because it allows us to have power or to give power with others. And this is very important because sometimes we want to give power to others. Sometimes we want to be vulnerable in a relationship, in a situation. And in that vulnerability, we are giving power to someone else. And that is important because sometimes when we're in a trusting relationship, we want to absolutely do that. But also in any relationship, we want to be aware of how we are showing up and the emotion that we are transferring to others, because we are always transferring emotions to others when we are around them. So it's very important for us to manage those emotions. And sometimes we may have a close person to us and we may be just feeling so badly that we need that person to be strong. But a lot of times we want to be aware either way of when and how we are transferring emotions. And that is what self-management is all about. So with regard to self-management, first and foremost, we want to, again, make sure that we're being aware of where we are and how we're feeling and what our triggers are and how certain places, certain people, and perhaps certain ways that people communicate or things that they do may trigger us in a positive or negative. When we've recognized things that may trigger us negatively, we want to find out what are those methods and tools that we can use to gain management and control of ourselves, to display ourselves in a certain way that gives us power and allows us to communicate what we want to communicate. So one tool is breathing. We hear a lot about breath work, but it's very, very powerful. It's not just a cliche. Breathing is so important, not just for managing our relationships ourselves when we're around people, but it's so important even in how we are treating ourselves, allowing ourselves to relax, especially if we live fast-paced lives. Breathing can truly help us to relax and help us to stay in a healthy physical state beyond the mental. I know Andrew Huberman specifically has a very powerful breathing technique. I'm not going to imitate it. If you YouTube him, I'm sure you will find it. But I will just say from my experience, it's probably the favorite one that I've seen. I am a huge proponent of deep breathing, counting to 10, deep breathing in and out. I do believe that instantly relaxes you. What Andrew Huberman does, he adds an extra step to that deep breathing where he's basically gulping a quick breath at the top and then bringing it down. It's a very interesting technique. I will tell you, when I've done it, it really does make a difference, and it's even more powerful than the regular deep breathing. So that's something that you might want to check out. But breathing is something you can do regardless of where you are, whether you're in a business building or you're in the grocery store or you're on the telephone. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. You always have access to breathing. As long as we're living, we have access to breathing. So that's your number one main tool you always want to use to manage yourself, is to make sure that you're breathing correctly. Secondly, when we are deep in our emotions and we have identified and realized that there are ways that you've been emotionally triggered, you want to ensure that you're comparing how you're feeling versus the facts. Now, what you're feeling is always going to be real. So in that sense, yes, you feel that way. It is a fact that you feel that. But you always want to say, okay, this is how I feel. Is there any way that someone else might feel differently than I feel? If there's any way that someone might interpret the way you feel differently than you interpret it, then that means that is a feeling. So you want to identify the raw facts of the situation, because what that will do is help you to not only understand your perspective, but understand the perspective of those around you that you may be encountering. Because sometimes things get lost in translation, and your perspective may be very different from someone else's, whereas both of your perspectives may be valid. And then thirdly, it's a very old adage, but it's still a powerful one, and that is counting. If someone says something or something happened and the only feeling that you have is a negative emotion, just count. Give yourself time to breathe and to relax. And don't force yourself to respond to a situation immediately, because you deserve time to respond to a situation that is challenging. So give yourself time to relax, because what that is going to do is help you to master what you say and how you say it, so that how you are delivering is the exact way that you want to deliver in that moment, in that context, with that person. And then fourthly, something you can practice is self-talk. And there are different ways you can practice self-talk. It depends on, obviously, the situation, but things that you want to tell yourself is this something that is going to be important a month from now, a year from now? Is this something that I can correct or cannot correct? These are things you want to assess in your self-talk. How can I see the positive of this situation? There are various ways, but you want to find ways that you can find positivity in that moment. And that's where I would focus the self-talk on. And then fifthly, you want to, again, and I mentioned this on the self-awareness piece, make sure that you have someone around you who you can trust, who can be a sounding board, who can give you a perspective that is different from yours, who not only can give you a perspective that is different from yours, but who will give you a perspective that is different from yours. This is going to be very important, even though it's about self-management. We all are interdependent on each other. So that is a very important way for you to manage yourself, is by understanding how others are perceiving you, especially who you trust. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you have enough time to recharge. We say R&R. And there are different ways and different amounts of times that we dedicate to recharging. Sometimes that recharging is a big recharge, like you work for months and months, and then you take a vacation, you go to a different context, a different setting. Other times that recharging is 5 minutes. You're taking 5 minutes between one meeting to the next. Or you may have to recharge while you're driving. You're still doing something, but perhaps it's turning on that music that you know is going to be relaxing for you. For some, like myself, it may be praying, it may be meditating. But the important part is finding those opportunities that you need to recharge, and hopefully you're doing some type of recharge on a daily basis. So those are different ways that you can manage yourself. So we've talked about the first part is self-awareness, being aware of where you are, how you are showing up in different contexts with different people. The second step, the second part is self-management, managing yourself as you are aware of how you're showing up. How do you manage those emotions? So next week, we will get into specifically their relationship awareness, also known as social awareness, being aware of others. Have a great day.